Alright, so welcome to part 1 of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Tutorial. This part will be over the sheer basics of the game. Hi, I'm up here. And this is nearly the basics. No specific types, no weird rules, nothing like that. This is if you and your friend got a starter deck and just wanted to know how to start off, how to get off the ground and get moving. No frills or anything, just the sheer basics. Alright, so first off, so you know, this is the back of a normal card. This is what you might be seeing when I play. For those of you who've played card games before, you know what this is. For those of you who are new, these are sleeves. You'll usually put them on just to keep your deck safe, to keep from wear and tear, because through all the shuffling that you do, cards will become worn down. This also protects them in case, you know, there's a spill of water or soda on the table that you're playing it on, or just general protection for your cards. And they're usually sold pretty cheaply in bundles of 50 or 60. So, what are the 3 card types you need to know right off the gate? Well, the first one are going to be monster cards. Monster cards have a couple different looks. I'll just show you all of them now and get to them later. And unfortunately, I don't happen to have a ritual card on me. Ritual cards will be a blue color. But these are your basic monster colors or whatnot. All we're going to focus on really are going to be these two. And these are your 2 core types of monsters. You have the light yellow, which is a normal monster. A normal monster means that it has no effect. It's just a body with stats. Over here we have an effect monster. An effect monster does just that. It has an ability on top of its other stats. It retains all the same stats that a normal monster has. It merely also has an ability. Now, you'll also notice they have these little stars up top. See, he has 3, he has 4. Those stars will come into play when you want to play larger monsters. A lower star creature you can bring out without any problems. However, the higher the stars get, the more sacrifice you have to do. Meaning, if you want a creature with 5 or 6 stars, you have to sacrifice a monster that's already on your field to bring that monster out. 7 or more, you have to sacrifice 2 monsters. This is called tributing. Now, the other types of monsters that I showed you are all going to go into what's called an extra deck. That's going to be very specific to your deck type that you end up building, so it's not something I'm going to really get into right now. The only other thing you need to know about your monsters is summoning. There's normal summoning them face up, and there's normal summoning them face down. The difference between the 2 states is one you can see the card, the other one you can't. The other is the position they're in at the beginning. This is called attack position. This is their base, most creatures' basic position. This is called defense position. The only differences come into combat. Spell cards. Spell cards are all denoted by green. Now, whereas monsters are separated mostly by color, spell cards are separated by a symbol above the name spell card. See right above there, if I move it a bit, there's a symbol, little white symbol right over there. Yep. Those symbols denote what sort of spell card. If there's no symbol, it is a basic normal spell. So what did these spell cards do? A normal spell, such as these, you play them during your turn, they have an effect, and then they go away. A card with a little infinity symbol, so one of those little, loops, you play those on your turn, and they stay on the field. If they have a condition that makes them go away, then they go away. If not, they stay on the field indefinitely until something happens to make it removed from the field. A spell card with a plus symbol by it means it is an equipped card. These equipped cards, you designate a target monster to equip it to, and you give it that effect. When the monster goes away, these spells also go away. Cards with a lightning bolt by them are called quick play cards. These cards can be activated during your opponent's turn, but only if they've been set previously. I'll explain those later. These cards can also be played directly from your hand in a chain. Again, explain that later. Basically, these have more availability as to when you can activate them. Ritual cards you use specifically for a specific type of summoning. In this case, ritual summoning. They'll usually have a specific monster that you can special summon with it, and the requirements of that monster. The only real one that takes some explaining are field spells. Now I showed you the little weird plus sign on this earlier, the little compass points. Each player can have a field spell and card in play, however only one field spell can be in play total at one time. Meaning, I can play a field spell on my turn. On their turn, they can play a field spell. If they do, mine is immediately destroyed. There can only be one field spell out at any given time, but either player can play field spells. When a field spell is out, it affects both players the same way. The last card of note are trap cards. Trap cards go in the same field as spell cards. However, trap cards have to be activated differently. They cannot be activated from hand. Trap cards have to be set on the field and cannot be activated until your turn ends. When your turn ends, then you'll be able to activate them. Now on top of that, most traps have a specific requirement to activating them. What I mean by that is they're traps. As traps, someone needs to spring them. Something needs to happen specifically to activate the trap. Most traps activate in response to creatures being summoned, special summoned, or a creature attacking. I want to say about 50% of traps have something to do with that. Others have weirder, more specific requirements, some of which are almost entirely useless. Now there are three types of traps. Normal trap, similar to normal spell. They have an effect, they activate, they go away. Continuous, same as the spell card. They have a condition, they activate, and then they stay on the field indefinitely until something occurs to make them go away. The real one of note is counter trap, and they have this little arrow above their name, if it'll focus. There we go. A counter trap acts to, as it denotes, counter something, to activate in response to something. We can go back and forth like this with spells and traps as long as we're able to and the conditions are right. That's what's called a chain. Counter traps are a little different. Counter traps are the end note of a chain, meaning we can go back and forth. If I play a counter trap, the only thing you can activate in response is another counter trap. Until we're out of counter traps, that's all that can be activated, and then they all resolve. All the effects activate, the cards go away. So what do you need to set up for a game? First, you need a deck. A deck consists of a minimum of 40 cards. You can have more than 40 if you want. Most people will just stick to 40. Now, if your deck needs an extra deck, you'll bring that out as well. An extra deck contains 15 cards. Exactly 15. Both players will start off with 8,000 life points. This may seem like a lot, but really, with this game, it isn't. Some cards require you to flip a coin, so if you have one of those cards, you need a coin. Some cards require you to roll a die. If you need a die, you have to get those. Some cards create counters. Anything can really be used as counters. Buttons, pennies, anything really, as long as it denotes a counter. Counters can be anywhere from putting counters on cards as far as like counting something down. Usually counters are tokens, are fake creatures. They create a creature which has stats of its own and effects, but that creature's not a card. And when something happens to make that token leave the field, it disappears. It is no more. It hits the graveyard, but then it just poofs. There's no more evidence that that token ever existed. Now, basic gameplay. Both players will start off with 5 cards. When it's your turn, you draw 1 card. So on your very first turn, when you go, you should have 6 cards in hand to use. Now the first player to go cannot attack, because obviously the other player has yet to put something out on the field. The first thing you're going to do is draw. Then you're going to go into your main phase. The main phase is where you plan everything out. So during this phase you can play spells, set traps, and summon monsters. Now every turn each player is allowed 1 normal summon. This is your basic summon. Now if you remember the cards I talked about, this creature has 3 stars on it. That means I can normal summon him on my turn. No worries about that. I can also set cards or activate spells. Setting cards means if I'm setting a trap, I'm setting a trap. If I set a spell, I can activate that spell. This is basically a holding place for spells and traps. Now I said you can normal summon once per turn. You can also special summon as many times as you want in one turn, given you can meet the required conditions. After the main phase, you enter the battle phase. If your opponent has monsters on the field, you can attack those monsters. I'm going to show you 3 different conditions that can occur. To do so, I need a larger fellow. Let's bring out Silva here. So, say I have my Silva. I can attack only once per turn. If I choose their creature in attack position, I go by my attack stat since I'm in attack position, and I go by his attack stat because he is in attack position. Creatures have an attack and defense stat. You go by the stat that your creature's position is in. He is in attack position, I go by that stat. Now I attack. I have 1,000 more attack than his creature. 2 things happen. His creature is destroyed and goes into the discard pile. In this game it's called the graveyard. Also, since it was an attack position, he takes 1,000 damage. That's because the difference between my attack and his attack was 1,000. Now say I choose to attack the defense position card. The first thing that happens is it flips up, because it's been attacked. This happens so we can check its stats. There are some effect monsters, and quite a few of them, that have an effect called flip. Flip means if it goes from face down to face up position, and that counts when it's attacked while face down. Now I'm in attack position. He's in defense position. He has a defense of 1300. Mine is larger, so he blows up. However, since he was in defense position, the opponent does not take life point damage. Thus, defense. Now, if, say, his defense was equal to the attack, they would cancel each other, nothing would happen. No one would take damage, nothing would be destroyed, because they matched evenly. If, however, his attack and my attack were equal, they would suicide each other. They would both blow up. Now, if I have a monster and you have no monsters, and he has yet to attack, I can attack you directly, and you would take 2300 life point damage. Now, after all your creatures have attacked once, or you've chosen to stop your battle phase, you can have a second main phase. Same conditions apply, but if there's an additional card you need to set, or something happened that you need to correct during that battle phase, you can do. After that, you hit the end phase and you pass the turn to your opponent. So, how do you win the game? Well, there are 3 ways, basically. The core way is to lower your opponent's life points to 0. Second, when a player is required to draw a card and cannot. So if it's the beginning of your turn and you go to draw a card and there are no cards left, you lose. Or, if your opponent forces you to draw cards through a card effect and you cannot, you lose. The third way is card specific. There's some cards that will say that you win the game if you meet these specific requirements, and usually they're hard enough as is that you need a whole deck around that strategy. During the next video, during part 2, I will go over the intricacies of some of the other types of cards. I'll go into the synchros, the exceeds, the fusions, all those other types of cards, and we'll integrate and say their pros and cons and why you might want to run them.